Paper 2, Overview Marathon. Alright, the CSEC paper 2, you just need to ensure that you're writing all 4 sections, and it would have to be practice that you are engaging in. Now when we talk about the summary, we're talking about a suggested time of 40 minutes. So you are expected to identify main points, you're expected to organize these points into your own words, and you're expected to stick clearly to ensure that you have appropriate grammar, sentence structure, vocabulary, spelling, and punctuation. Remember, it's continuous prose, that means it's one paragraph, no point. You're expected to use 5 points in the beginning, and then by the time you're ready to write your paragraph, your summary, you're expected to have on minimum 7 points and 120 words in your own words. Okay, here we have a review. List 5 main points. Create 7 sentence points into paraphrase points. Add your connectives to join the paraphrase points, and remember, no, you're supposed to generalize examples, illustrations, devices, quotes, explanations. Rewrite your paragraph, your points into a paragraph, and then you count your number of words and enclose same into a bracket. Section B, letter, editorial, blog, article, email, notice, report. Now, let's look at the formal letter. Some facts. Now, remember, you need to view the scenario because you might be given specific details that you will have to note into your actual presentation in this section. But otherwise, if none is given, you're expected to have 2 addresses, yours and the receiver. Your date must be written out. The subject must be included. Ensure that the salutation that you use would not have the Christian name and it would end with a colon. You're expected to have 5 paragraphs, an introduction, 3 developing paragraphs, and a conclusion. And all your body paragraphs should be based on the scenario given. Now, as you close, you're expected to have 2 parts traditionally, but as you know, you can have 1 part to the closing. Should you have 2 parts, remember to begin the first part in capital letter and the second part must come on letter. Please note the examples. Now, how do you start your first paragraph in a formal letter? Please note. Letter of complaint, these are some starts. Letter of information, these are some starts. Letter of request, these are some starts. Now, how do you end? Notice the way to end. Here are some points. You might want to use one of them so that it sticks in your mind. Notice there are ideas there for the letter of complaint, the letter of information, and the letter of request. Now here is an actual scenario, and you're expected to write a letter. Now, as you read the scenario, you are expected to look to see what part of it would focus on it's giving you instruction, and notice the marker there. Then the next step, you focus on how do you divide the information that is there so that you get your paragraph for your body. So let's look at how the example is done. So you have your sender's address there because you're asked to send it to the museum. So you just quickly make up something that aligns, and bear in mind that the date should relate to the same date that you're given there. The receiver's address, the subject, salutation, you're expected to send to the patrons. Note the beginning or in the introduction. Note the body points. All the ideas that relate would be in the same body point. And the concluding paragraph and your closing, your signature, and your role of being a manager. Now, as you jump over quickly into what an email looks like, just take a look at all the parts of an email as presented. So here we have the 2019 email. Again, we want to look at the part of the email that would instruct us as to where our points would be. Notice the indicator dividing the scenario so that we know how we write our paragraphs. Alright, so let's see the actual presentation of the email. So that's the header, and we have our receiver's email, or who sent the email, the date. We have our subject, and then we have our salutation. These are students, thus we have the Christian name here. Had it been an adult, it would be otherwise. Then we have the body paragraph number 1, body paragraph number 2, body paragraph number 3, 4, 5. We have our closing, and we have our signature, and we have the role. You're expected to be a student. Let's jump quickly into a past paper notice here. So we have our instructions again, and again we are going to flesh out the information that is there that we need to put in our notice. Please watch the indicator, how it divides the points in order to prepare for the actual notice presentation. So here the notice in presentation. There we have the name of the organization and the address, and we have our date. It could have been the month and then the day and then the year. Notice these information were actually in the previous notice. We have the middle notice there, that's the title and our heading, just a short summative idea of what the scenario is based on. Then we have our body paragraphs divided up nicely, and we have our signature and our role. Let's quickly go into an actual report. So again, we have our scenario, and we go to the business of dividing the points point by point, so that when it's time to arrange our ideas into paragraph, we know exactly how to do it. And here we have the actual memo format being presented for this one. So notice how the heading looks. Date to from subject. Then we have our introduction with the actual day there. We have our first developing point, our second developing point, or third developing point, or conclusion. Okay, so here we have another scenario, and this one is also a report with a different flair to it. So again, we look at the scenario and we divide. We divide into our points, and once we have divided our points, then the next step is to actually do the presentation. So this is how the letter would look for that simple report. We'd have our sender's address, we have the date, we have the receiver's address. Notice we were given a company, so we just probably make up a name, an address. We have the subject, we have the salutation. Notice the first name, that's a Christian name, is not there. We have our introduction with the first point. We have our first developing paragraph with the second point, second developing paragraph with the third set of points, third developing paragraph with the fourth set of points, and our fifth paragraph, which is our conclusion. And we have our closing, our signature with the witness's name, and we have the role there to indicate that that person is the witness. Then we jump over quickly. So this is how we do our blog. We have our catchy start, we have our introduction with the overview at the end there. We have the first developing paragraph, and we have the subheading above that, second developing paragraph and the subheading, third developing paragraph and the subheading, and we have our conclusion with our question at the end. And if one thing we're going to ask ourselves about the blog is that we're expected to ensure that we see a title, we see an introduction that explains what is to be taught, we ensure that there are subheadings for each of the sections, we also ensure that we have body paragraphs, namely 5, and then we ensure that we have a conclusion with a question at the end. Now, as we jump quickly into our article writing, notice we're expected to have our heading, the byline, which is namely the writer's name and the date. Then we have the introductory paragraph with our thesis statement at the end. We have the first developing paragraph. We have our second developing paragraph, our third developing paragraph. We have our conclusion with our recommendation, our stance, and so forth. All right. Now, as we jump into the story, everybody loves writing a story, right? But we have to ensure that whatever we write, it indicates whether we're using the first or third person point of view. We have the exposition, that is setting our characterization. We have the action, and then we have some amount of reflection where the protagonist is seen learning a lesson. Now, as we tackle the story, we have to pay attention to the stimulus. For the January 2024 paper, we saw a picture where that appears to be a child running. This detail must be included. Now, we also saw the phrase, "I turned the corner and what I saw caused me to laugh uncontrollably." Now, that statement should be in the story if you're deciding to write the fourth question. So, what should we remember about story writing? What is it that you want to write? Make something that is out of the box, which can be sad or happy. Ensure that you use a romance or with some elements of surprise if that's what you want to use, detective mystery, regular structure or flashback, horror. It can be ironic or twist, or something with a future perspective or something science fiction related. Whatever you do, as long as you aim to write what appears to be a non-linear story, you'll be going past 5 up into 6, and then you can even ensure that you write a viewpoint story for self. So what are you supposed to ask yourself at the end of writing your story? Did I use 2 full pages? Did I punctuate my sentences correctly? Did I indent the paragraphs to present the story's event? Did I check to ensure that there are no spelling or grammatical errors? Did I capitalize the I's when they appear alone? Did I use capital letters for naming words? Is my dialogue showing new paragraphs at each speaker? Does my dialogue use quotation marks and appropriate punctuation? Did I insert my ellipses correctly to show lapse in time, hesitation, or trailing off? No, your story is pretty much marked out of 25, 10 for content, 5 for organization, and 10 for language. So you're expected to ensure that if anything, you ensure that all your I's are in capital letters when they stand alone. No punctuation mark is missing, especially the end mark, and you watch your use of spelling. Sentences and paragraphs must be clear, and the content that you develop must have a level of excitement, because remember, a regular story, you only get 5 for content. And so you want to develop the action in the story so that you include like twist, flashback, or flash forward. And remember that a story that is less than 1 page will fail, so you're expected to write at least 2 or more pages for your stories. Now, if you write something that is not a story, then you will be getting a 0.